clueless or that ignorant? And I thought, well, there must be, because they obviously have the money, so they must be getting it from all the advertisers and everything because their audience is so big. Turns out, no. The government's been paying them to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. I've already, again, like I said, talked to a couple attorneys because I'm like, well, maybe there needs to be legal action. I don't know if you can do clawback on some of these corporations and force them to give back the money, but something needs to happen here, because while we were here presenting the truth, we were being shadow banned, we're being blocked, we're being deplatformed. We have other conservative outlets that were being literally destroyed because they were being pushed out there by groups like NewsGuard and others as disinformation providers, or the Dirty Dozen, or whatever you want to call them. And so they couldn't monetize their broadcast outlets. Businesses, families, and many of these businesses are run with families and families involved, have been destroyed to the tune of millions and millions of dollars by the government going to these groups while they shut down conservative outlets. I just want you to speak to this as a pastor, but more importantly, as an attorney, please.
Well, I guess my initial response is, what in the world is the government doing in the media business? I mean, I thought we had a fourth estate. I thought the media was a watchdog, on the government, and all these things that are now coming to the surface. Now you find that the government is actually promoting, financially supporting, not just promoting, subsidizing, media outlets. And of course, what's that media outlet supposed to do? They're not reflecting the values of America. They're reflecting the values of whoever signs their paycheck. Mm-hmm. So the government getting involved in all this stuff, basically shows me that they're interested in not just advancing a narrative, but trying to get everybody out there who thinks it's an independent, honest media source to buy into that narrative. And if that weren't enough, there was allegations that came out at the end of the Biden years related to how the Biden regime put pressure on social media, Facebook, etc., to complain about what could be posted and what couldn't be posted. So, I hear all this stuff and I'm wondering what in the world happened to our First Amendment. Is the First Amendment dead? And what in the world happened to the Fourth Estate? And that's what makes networks like yours, all the more important. Independent citizen journalists, all the more important. Elon Musk relinquishing, control over, or rather turning X into a free speech platform, that becomes very important. And so it's like we're going to have to start going to these independent sources to get the truth, because the government has basically blocked or is advancing a narrative.
Mm-hmm. So now Marco Rubio is in charge of USAID, and he's going to take them from about 10,000 employees down to just 294. 97% reduction. And on Tuesday, administration put a stop to all USAID work and placed all employees on leave, with thousands of overseas workers to be recalled within 30 days. And according to the report, over 2/3 of USAID's workers are located outside the United States, which makes you wonder if that's on purpose to also be able to do things against the American law, and they're doing it outside of our borders. We know the CIA operates and not supposed to operate in our borders, and they say that this USAID is a front for the CIA. So again, it would make sense that 2/3 of their workers are out of the country because they're being run by the CIA, which is not to conduct affairs in the United States. So again, I think there needs to be a serious prosecution of people on this. But we're also finding out that their organization, as of 2023, the so-called aid, the organization managed more than $40 billion in projects. $40 billion. Dr. Woods?
Yeah, well, and even beyond that, as a pastor, some of the things I've read is this, what you're talking about here, they're involved in religion. So they're sending, financial things into various churches around the world to promote godless, humanistic, anti-Bible, anti-truth agendas like the LGBTQ, plus agenda. So, I would just say if you're a church and if you want to do real journalism, I mean, I wouldn't touch any of this money with a 10-foot pole because with it is always going to come strings. And I think Marco Rubio and others, Elon Musk, are just what they're basically doing is shining the searchlight of truth on these things. And we're just becoming aware of them for the first time. The left, of course, right now is melting down. Pocahontas and others are just making one extreme statement after the other. Well, their slush fund is disappearing. That's what they're upset about.
Oh, of course they are. One other item here. Borders are, these are all linked, by the way, at worldviewreport.com, your daily aggregated news site, worldviewreport.com. Borders are expects kinetic warfare between U.S. troops and Mexican drug cartels. So he expects there to be actual shooting, bombs, hand grenades, these kind of things, maybe rocket-propelled grenades, who knows? We have heard about this. We have seen the military hardware they have. We've showed for a couple of years on television the troops, if you will, the military-looking troops of the cartels that are driving what looks like equipment from our own Department of Defense. I mean, fully militarized down on the border. Todd Bensman has been warning us about this. J.J. Carroll, Michael Yawn. And now President Trump's border czar has come out and actually said, there is likely going to be kinetic fighting on the border. And again, I go back to what this means for us here in America. If the American government under Donald Trump goes this hard against the cartel, Todd Bensman was on our show last week saying these guys are not going to sit by idly and have their cash flow disrupted. They will go to war. And I go back to my common theme, which is the quickest way to go after a nation is to go after their critical infrastructure, go after their power grid, go after their water. And we know that the Sinaloa network, they're all over the country. They're all over the United States. We're not talking about at the border. They're inside the border. They have set up their drug operations all over the United States of America, the Sinaloa network. Then you add in cooperating and working with the MS-13 gangs. Then you add in they're working with Venezuelan gangs. Then you add in they're working with the CCP, of which there are over 100,000 military-aged males working with the CCP, and the CCP provides the precursor chemicals for the fentanyl to the Mexican cartels. So now all of a sudden we're back to fighting that coalition of people, and if they think, the average American, that a border war could go on between our government, our military, because President Trump has deemed these groups to be a terrorist organization, and our military goes down there, the American people need to understand kinetic war doesn't mean just at the border. These people are already inside the mainstream and mainland of America. Comment?
Well, I think Trump is finding out what the late Bobby Kennedy, found out. Remember, Bobby Kennedy, as AG at the time, went after the mob. Well, the mob is not just going to sit by and, as you just said, let their revenue source disappear. And so we learned about the assassination of the Kennedys, not trying to get into that whole controversy, but it's just hard for me to believe that mob influence couldn't be involved, in any of that. And so I think this is the kind of thing that's happening. I mean, Trump wants to shut off the border, get away from George Soros, open borders policies. Well, the problem is there's people out there, bad actors, that are financially benefiting from those open borders, and they're not just going to sit by and let it happen. So I would anticipate this kind of warfare heating up. But, obviously no one wants shooting. But if the shooting has to happen, I'd rather have it happen at the border than inside our own country.
Very well said.
And so, that's where we are.
Let's switch to Middle East. European ministers come out against President Trump's Gaza plan. They're calling it unacceptable and against international law. I don't remember any of these European ministers talking about the violation of international law by Hamas, by the United Nations, by funding terrorists. housing terrorists, both the terrorists and their weapons, and housing the Jewish hostages. Now, all of a sudden, the European ministers want to worry about international law?
Yeah. Well, it's the reason for it is they're wedded to the two-state solution. They don't like the direction Trump is moving in, where he is seeing this new plan that he has that he unveiled a couple days ago, as a potential substitute for the two-state solution. They don't like that. They're wedded to the two-state solution. And then the next article I sent you, it describes 5 Arab states, not just the European ministers, but the 5 Arab states, rejecting the plan dead on arrival, so to speak, as well. And the reason for it is they want to use the Palestinians, this displaced population, as a propaganda piece. And that propaganda piece disappears if these people come out of Gaza, according to the Trump plan, and get reabsorbed into Jordan, Egypt, and the surrounding nations. Yeah. So it's kind of like this border issue. They've got a vested interest in opposing the Trump plan.
And of course, we know that, I guess, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, he's not too excited about Trump's plan either, which again is very interesting because President Trump, I think, wants to get some kind of deal going and some kind of peace going. We'll get into all that with Dr. Andy Woods on the other side of the break. His website's andywoodsministries.org, ours worldviewradio.com. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com. All right, welcome back. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Dr. Andy Woods and I are looking forward to being with a lot of you in person in Milwaukee at the Waukesha Expo Center just outside of Milwaukee on Tuesday night, April 15th. We're calling it our Worldview Radio Bible Prophecy Rally. Worldview Radio Bible Prophecy Rally, Tuesday night, April 15th at the Waukesha Expo Center. It's the first time in many, many, many years I've been back up there. And, we just kind of take it 1 year at a time. But we're going to come up there, Lord willing, April 15th. That's the plan. And it's free. It's brought to you by our foundation, Worldview Foundation. So we're making it free, renting the building and all that goes on with the cost of that. And you can get tickets for free, but you got to have tickets because we need to know how many seats to put out. They charge us $2 a chair, so we don't want to put out more than we need. We also don't want to have people walk in and not have a seat, so we want to be prepared for you. So could you please register at worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events, and then spread the word, will you? Tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, True Social, whatever you do. Let people know about the Worldview Radio Bible Prophecy Rally on Tuesday evening, April 15th, 7 to 9:30, 7 p.m. Central to 9:30. And if you are a member of our vault at worldviewtube.com/vault, you'll be able to live stream it. worldviewtube.com/vault. Logan and the team will be there live streaming it with multiple cameras. And then from there, we're going on to a location we'll tell you about soon that's going to be very interesting, very historic, very informative, lots of history involved, somewhere I've wanted to go for many, many years. And now I'm getting the chance to do it. We'll tell you soon what we're talking about. I think you guys will be excited about it. It'll make for great television to bring you as well. Very historical. I love history, but I think you guys all know I love history. Speaking of history, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this. I have being framed right now about 15. Logan, you have our mailing address up there? I have about 15 historical newspapers being framed. My mom sent me a bunch of newspapers, like the assassination of President Kennedy. One of our viewers sent me the Dallas episode, the Dallas issue, the day that President Kennedy was shot, the next day or that evening, whenever it was released. I have the guys landing on the moon. I know that's controversial now. A lot of people don't think that's true, but I have I have the video, the paper, I should say, of that story. That's right, Logan. I have what else? Oh, the day that Reagan was sworn in, the day the hostages from Iran returned home. I have all of these historical newspapers, and they're being framed right now. I've been collecting them, and I thought, I got to get these framed because I think it's pretty cool that we're in the Christian worldview and news arena, and I got a bunch of empty wall space in control room 2. And I thought, that'd be really cool to frame all these historical newspapers because, we do news. So walk in, I love history. You can walk in and see all these great historical newspapers, some of them before I was born. So with that being said, I think I mentioned this once before, and I picked up a couple of historical newspapers this way. If you are one of those people that has an attic with things in it, like old, in good shape, historic newspapers, and your kids aren't interested, your grandkids aren't interested, well, by all means, feel free to send it on to us. And if it's a historical paper, like an event, I have the Space Shuttle Challenger exploding, that paper, Reagan being sworn in, I think I said. I don't think I have one of Reagan the day he was shot. I have one of the Washington Star. The last time the Washington Star was published, that's 128 years. So any of those you want to, if you have a family member that doesn't want your historical headlines, newspapers, send them our way with our mailing address, being that 875 West Poplar Avenue, Suite 23 in Collierville, Tennessee. We'll frame them, add them to our collection, and then we'll be showing some of this on TV, all these historical newspapers, because many of you, like me, love history, and you love artifacts and things like this. I think they're pretty cool. So with that being said, Dr. Woods, let's get back to the Middle East. The nations over there, the 5 nations over there, they don't really care for what President Trump is doing. They've sent him a letter, as you've said, 5 Arab nations rejecting transfer of Gazans and urging a 2-state solution. But President Trump's ambassador has already said, we're not doing the whole 2-state solution thing, right?
Yeah, it's a real step forward because, you might remember in the first term, the deal of the century that finally got unleashed. And remember, it was posted on his White House website and also on his private then Twitter page. And it basically had Israel kind of carved up, to the best I could tell. And it really was another 2-state solution. And you might remember at that time about everything that could go wrong for Trump went wrong for Trump the moment that post, hit. And the economy before that was soaring. He was headed to inevitable reelection, and everything changed for him at that point. And I have a tendency to think that he's learned his lesson. I have a tendency to think that he has enough people around him, like Mike Huckabee and others that are telling him, don't do that again. Don't divide Israel. And so I have some news articles where he says the 2-state solution is not the only option. It looks like he's moving more towards this Gaza ownership thing that he was talking about as another way of handling it. And so I'm very optimistic at this point because I believe what the Bible says, as do you, that if you come against Israel, you try to divide Israel, God is going to divide you. And I remember the late George Herbert Walker Bush, same exact scenario. He came back from the Gulf War. America did, and we were successful, and he had a 90% approval rate. And the moment he made this move to divide Israel is the moment that his own coalition was divided. A guy named Ross Perot came along and siphoned away, 40% or something like that of the conservative vote that was in the Reagan coalition and the Bush coalition in 1988. And so I don't know. I just think it's never goes well for these presidents when they try to divide Israel. It looks like Trump is moving a different direction.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. We already dealt with it this week. We'll make a quick reference to it. The Ben Gurion Canal, vision amidst upheaval. I still have not seen anyone else reporting on this yet, other than, the Times of Israel. But I mean, other news outlets, radio shows, I haven't heard them. I'm kind of shocked. I thought by now the left would have picked up on this and be using this as a club against President Trump to say that, oh, this comes down to money is what it's all about. I keep waiting for this. But apparently the mainstream corporate media hasn't picked up on this story yet, have they?
I haven't heard anybody, even at some of my favorite prophecy channels that I listen to. I haven't heard them talk about it either. But, and we're not saying this is that. We're not being dogmatic, but we're saying this could very well be what's lurking behind the scenes, because that canal, which connects the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, it's supposed to end in Ashkelon, which is right next door to Gaza. And if you go online and watch some of the videos on this Ben Gurion Canal, some put it actually ending in the Gaza Strip itself. So you can't have and this is supposed to bring buku bucks, to Israel, so to speak, and it's supposed to weaken Egypt and the dominance that she has because of the Suez Canal, etc. And so you can't have a canal like that with a Hamas state in Gaza. It just isn't going to work. And so that could very well be the reason why he keeps talking about it as the next, French Riviera, and he wants to make it into something very, very nice. And I think it has something to do with this wealth that this canal is going to provide.
So President Trump, doing what he's doing in Israel is, has definitely prophetic implications, right? And then he just signed an executive order banning central bank digital currencies. Well, I think that's important too, because if President Trump was for the New World Order, he would want central bank digital currencies. He would want to track all of us, control us, help set up the mark of the beast system through central bank digital currencies. Now, I know that you have a beast system set up through artificial intelligence and all this going on with that. It can be used for good or ill, right? But if President Trump was interested in the New World Order's agenda, he wouldn't be signing an executive order to do away with central bank digital currencies now, would he?
Right. Remember, and how long have we been warning about these CBDCs? Forever. Ever since I've been on the air with you, we've been talking about this as a danger, because that's what paved the way for the China social credit score system. Once you move to everything being digitized through these CBDCs, all transactions, then that puts the infrastructure in place for the social credit score system. And Trump, with the stroke of a pen, says we're not going that direction. So that's not a pro-Antichrist move. A lot of people out there are trying to tell me Trump is the Antichrist. That's an anti-Antichrist move. And then the next article related to BRICS, he did it again. He said, look, if BRICS is going to develop its own currency to, devalue the dollar, then every nation that's involved in that, and we know BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, I think, and also Egypt, the UAE, and others. But if you guys are going to do this, you want to come up with a new currency to devalue the dollar, then we just slapped 100% tariff on you. And now all those nations in BRICS are moving away from this new currency. Surprise, surprise. So that's another move that he's made that's huge, that's nationalistic and not global.
I've gotten some emails. Look, folks, we just call balls and strikes here. We just call balls and strikes, all right? So we're not in the tank for anybody. We just call them like we see them. So I got to switch to one topic here. I'm getting emails, I'm getting texts, people saying, can you please comment on President Trump appointing Paula White to be the head of some kind of faith-based initiative or something? And I said, yeah, she's a false teacher, plain and simple. And someone said, well, why do you think he likes her? And I've had this conversation with a few people over the years, because she was around during his first run and during his first administration. And many people do not know that President Trump has spoken positively about Norman Vincent Peale. So President Trump in the past has a really, appreciated Norman Vincent Peale, and he was into the whole positive thinking, which of course he ended up going on and influencing Robert Schuller. Robert Schuller went on to influence, by his own admission, Rick Warren. So you can kind of see the ethos of all this. But you could see if he liked some of the teaching of Norman Vincent Peale, then what's being taught by Paula White and some of the Word of Faith folks and New Apostolic Reformation folks would sound very similar to him, because it is. It's kind of the name it and claim it, Word of Faith, law of attraction, power of positive thinking. I said, but then you have to add something else to it, and that is that Paula, if I remember her story correctly, kind of came out of poverty and maybe even some substance abuse. I can't remember specifically, but certainly came up out of poverty, okay? And I think President Trump appreciates the stories of people in his eyes that have come from nowhere and then, become successful or famous, but financially successful. Now, again, she's a false teacher, so again, how has she become financially successful is the real question, right? But this is, again, where we should pray for President Trump. So I'm not avoiding this topic, folks. I can mention something and still appreciate the great things that President Trump is doing, but say, hey, I don't agree with the theology of Paul White, and we should pray for President Trump and pray that the good people around him, like Governor Huckabee, help him see her false theology. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, website worldviewradio.com. Be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider, host of Crosstalk, which is the nation's original Christian talk program since the 1970s on more than 100 outlets nationwide. Also available at bcy.org, bcy.org. Andy, before the break, I mentioned Paula White. She's been appointed as the head of some kind of faith-based initiative or something by President Trump. And I said, hey, look, we call balls and strikes. I think she's a false teacher. But I explained why I think he has an affinity for someone like that. And we would need to pray for President Trump. And that maybe some people around him would say, hey, look, not everybody out there recognizes this brand of religiosity. And, just FYI, in fact, many people would explain from the Bible why what she's doing is teaching is heretical. So just this is not, she's not presenting the face of Christianity. And be aware that when you put her in positions that make it look like that, it's great concern to a lot of your base. What would you say?
Well, I would say theology is probably not Donald Trump's strong point. My understanding is his relationship with Paula White is he was courting her politically, earlier, before he even decided to run for president.
Yes.
I think he's attracted to that kind of a platform because whatever you think about Paula White, and I agree with you, her theology and Norman Vincent Peale's theology is not very good. In fact, I remember what the late Walter Martin said about Norman Vincent Peale. He said, Paul is appealing, that Peale's theology is appalling. That's what Martin's. So I'm no fan as a pastor, of either Norman Vincent Peale or Paula White, but I think the way Trump looks at it as she has a huge following. Regardless of what you think of her, she's got a lot of people listening to her. And I agree with you. He's probably attracted to her, compelling life story. And I think in his mind, he thinks that if he brings her into the fold, that, a lot of so-called Christians are going to follow. And he's probably right about that. So and people bring these kinds of things up, but you see this kind of thing, false teaching within an administration, would not have changed if Kamala Harris was elected. Because
Right.
if you look at her pastor in San Francisco, I can't remember the fellow's name, but he's like a Reverend Jeremiah Wright
Mm-hmm.
times two, I call him Reverend Jeremiah wrong, but he's like a Jeremiah Wright on steroids. So she would have brought in all of this critical race theory and all this stuff in the guise of Christianity into her administration. He's bringing in, the kind of the name it, claim it, blab it, and grab it, kind of theology into his administration. And so this is the choices that we're faced with in a fallen world. I don't think Trump ran as pastor in chief, theologian in chief. He ran as a nationalist. And the best I can tell, his policies are a lot closer to scripture than, had been Kamala Harris had she been elected.
Right. Well, people are asking and tweeting at us or texting and emailing and asking us about it, so we've addressed it. And again, the best advice I can give is just to pray that Donald Trump does not believe or is not led to believe that this is Christianity, what she represents, or that what she represents is the gospel. Because I have the strong desire, as I do for anybody that's lost, that they would know the truth and that people not be deceived thinking what Paul is preaching is the gospel, because I don't think it is. And I think you and I agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's go to this, the next article here. Trump pardons. Well, here we go. Perfect example. This wouldn't have happened under Kamala. President Trump pardons protesters convicted of blocking abortion clinics. Dr. Woods?
Yeah, those are, and if you get into that article, you'll see that the people that were rotting in jail are like in their 70s and late 80s. I mean, these are people that have never had any run-in with the law at all. We've already talked about, what was her name, Bevelyn Williams, who's now reunited with her husband. And I can't remember how many kids she has that, need their mom at home.
Yeah,
by the way,
76. Joan Bell was 76. Jean Marshall, 74. Oh, Eva Edel, 89. Yeah. You see, this goes back to what I discussed and have here for so many years. Our judicial system is not only corrupt, but it's not based on any common sense. You really think you're going to put people in their 70s in prison, that they're a threat to society? Why would you do this? There's no reason to confine anyone that has not committed a violent crime. If they have not committed violent crimes, they do not belong in lockup. You can fine them, you can give them house arrest, you can do all kinds of things like that. But we become a nation with a prison industrial complex, and I won't get into my soapbox again, but this is proof positive. Our judicial system is corrupt to the core, and many of the judges are corrupt to the core, because any judge with common sense would say this is ridiculous. And if they're like, well, Brandon, they're just following the federal law, we need to change it. Well, you know what? Then those judges need to speak up and come together as judges and say, we want Congress to change this because we don't like sentencing 89, 76, and 74-year-old non-violent people to prison who were just simply praying or doing what many could say was being done during the civil rights movement. We make heroes out of Rosa Parks. We make heroes out of civil rights leaders. How is what they were doing any different than what the pro-lifers are doing? It's a moral civil rights issue, and it's an issue of the sanctity of life and being created in the image of God. It's the same cause of morality. But, we make heroes out of the civil rights leaders that did it, but we throw into federal prison the pro-lifers.
Yeah. Well, it's related to that FACE law, which needs, it's actually unconstitutional. It needs to be repealed immediately.
And I hear the DOJ is going to go after it. I hear Trump's DOJ is going to go after it.
Good, because this is how the Biden regime chose to use its resources, going after people like this. And in one case, someone was out there protesting, and a nurse came out and sprained her ankle. And so, oh, look, you're causing violence under the face law. And, the face law says you can't create a climate of intimidation around abortion clinic. Well, what in the world does that mean? A climate of intimidation? You can interpret that, any way you want to interpret it, and use that law to prosecute anybody that you want that happens to be on the wrong side of the issue. And so Trump, it's interesting, you just used the word ridiculous. That's what Trump said in his executive order as he signed it and allowed all these people out of prison. He used the word ridiculous. These people should have never been prosecuted. And if I have to take a Paula White, in some kind of spiritual advisory position with these people getting let out, if that's the price I got to pay, then I guess I'll take the Paula White plus Trump, because what Trump is doing here is absolutely biblical. It's magnificent. It's pro-God. It's pro-Constitution. And, it's just fascinating to me that Christians want to focus on Paula White, and they don't want to focus on the fact that a great injustice has been overturned here because of Donald Trump's executive order.
Mm-hmm. Well, I get people emailing me, and they're telling me, that President Trump is, on the short list to be the Antichrist. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't think Donald Trump is on the short list to be the Antichrist for many reasons. What do you say to that? Are you hearing that same thing?
I hear that constantly. They told me the same thing about Reagan.
Well, his name was actually Ronald Wilson Reagan, Reagan. I mean, 6, and then
6,
Ronald.
6, and yeah, it's kind of hard for me to believe that the Antichrist overthrew the Soviet Union. That doesn't make sense to me. Well, here's the reasons I don't think Trump is the Antichrist. A, he doesn't come out of Europe. B, he's not a globalist, which the Antichrist will be. C, the Antichrist is called the man of lawlessness. Trump's whole agenda is law and order. And I could probably rattle off a few other things, but he does not fit the criteria, of the Antichrist.
The Antichrist supposedly rejects the affection of women. I don't think that's an issue. I don't think President Trump has anything against women.
Right. And, I haven't seen Trump rise from the dead either recently.
No.
Although some have tried to argue that, his political comeback and things like that, or his survival of some assassination attempts, 2 of them, is a resurrection from the dead. But the Greek,
I heard someone the other day saying that it was on one of the mainstream, like MSNBC. They were saying that his political rise was like someone rising from the dead. The political rise, he was dead and out. He was being prosecuted, indicted, and then all of a sudden, voila, he rises. I'm like, wow. I'm surprised that there aren't people using that, Let's go to this one. Vigano, Archbishop Vigano, who I think has been deflocked by Marxist Pope, who he won't even call the Pope. He calls him by his original name of Bergoglio. He won't call him Pope Francis. He believes he actually talks about the smoke of Satan that came out of the smokestack and picked him. He does. It's hilarious. Archbishop Vigano exposes globalist elites' hypocrisy, how religious and civil leaders profit from illegal immigration and the LGBTQ plus agenda. It's an article by Archbishop Vigano.
Yeah, and what he's doing in that piece, and just to kind of set the table who this guy is. I mean, you've talked about him before
a lot. Yeah,
he's basically a nationalist and conservative within the Roman Catholic structure or hierarchy, exposing the whole globalist Marxist agenda and everything in Roman Catholicism. So he's a very important voice, even though I don't adhere to Roman Catholic theology. I certainly can listen to a voice like this in terms of his stand against what he looks at as compromises within Roman Catholicism. But anyway, the point of that article is about how all of these people that are parading for LGBTQ plus rights are all profiting from the movement. And he talks about that bishop from the Episcopalian bishop that used her pulpit to kind of give Trump some left-wing lecturing in the inaugural church service that made national news a couple of weeks ago. He talks about the fact that she lives in a $2 million villa. I mean, a $2 million villa, in spite of the fact that she's out there lecturing Trump about the oppressed and the poor. And some other information came in recently about massive checks this woman has been getting. And so he exposes all of these kinds of things, and he just says, I want you to remember that when these people speak out for, the oppressed, they're kind of like the Pharisees of old. They're living like royalty.
Yeah. Let's go to this one real quick. Well, in fact, let me open the phone lines. 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. Again, 1-800-347-9829. UN rights chief warns anti-Semitism is rampant, says Jews face increasing threats. Tonight, I'm going to cover a video. Where's that video out of, Logan? What state? That was in Manhattan? But she's from Kentucky, though, right? Okay, but they were she's from Kentucky, but the event happened, this being accosted in a lobby happened in Manhattan, and she is reportedly with CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, which was birthed by Muslim Brotherhood, which just got Hamas. They started in 87. Poor Logan is going to have to spend about an hour bleeping out all of her cursing at this Jewish man calling for their utter extermination. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com. Worldviewtalk.com. All right, 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. Tonight, I'm going to have on Shahram Hadian because we're going to talk about this rise of anti-Semitism, and then you send me this article today because this woman with CARE is saying such vile things to this Jewish man. And she knows he's Jewish because he keeps telling her, I'm Jewish? You're really going to stand here and say these things to me? And it's so bad. He says, I'm turning this over to the FBI. Well, good luck with that. I mean, it's going to take a while to clean out the FBI. They're lawless. But yes, comment on this before we go to the phone lines.
Well, it's just an article like that. And keep in mind, we just emerged from Holocaust Remembrance Day, I think was January 27th. You would think 80 years, as close as 80 years to the Holocaust, that we would be kind of mindful about anti-Semitism, but we've gotten worse. Anti-Semitism, is growing. It's worldwide. And in fact, that article talks about how the French youth today, the majority of the French youth today, don't even know what the Holocaust is, or was.
And that's true in America, too.
Yeah, and I went through the public school system, K through 12. Everybody knew who Hitler was.
They showed us the black and white, reel-to-reel films in junior high.
And today we've got a European generation growing up, maybe in America too, that doesn't even know who Hitler was. Now, this is prophetically significant because the desire to wipe the Jews out ultimately is demonic. Satan understands that the kingdom is going to come through the Jew, Israel, and so what better way to stop that from happening than to kill every Jew, on planet Earth? It's as simple as that. And once people see that, suddenly Auschwitz, the Holocaust, all of these things that are going on right now suddenly can be explained from the demonic perspective.
Yep. Let's go to George, line 1. Hi, George. Thanks for calling in, George.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I was going to make a comment that Constantine in the 3rd century legitimized or legalized Christianity, and of course he was a sun god worshiper. And history kind of repeats itself. Nobody has any idea what love one another means.
Thank you,
that's
George.
what Jesus said, you will know that you are my servants.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, George. Zoe in Illinois, line 2. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, Brandon. I just wanted to mention, I know you must be familiar with Ralph Strollinger, Capital Ministries.
Yes,
Capital
absolutely.
is in OL. And
He was a former NBA player. I had dinner with him one year at CMP at the, what doesn't matter, but it was a hotel outside of D.C., CNP. He was at my dinner table. That's when I met him. He was a former NBA player and then started the Capital Ministry. Has a wonderful ministry, actually.
yes, and I was just thinking, he as you know, he has Bible studies for members of Congress, and some of them have said, well, this is real Christianity. I don't have to go to those other fake things anymore that they have for the congressmen. And if he could get to President Trump, he could give him the gospel. And I feel like maybe he could, or maybe one of these congressmen that are under his teaching could eventually.
Well, we should all pray for that.
Yes, we should. But I do follow that ministry regularly, and I really like him. He does really good Bible studies.
Yep, I enjoyed my conversation with him at dinner that night. He was a very good guy to have dinner with and talk to in his MBA career, and he's now using his position for, as you said, Bible studies on Capitol Hill. Damon in Kansas, line 4. Hi, Damon.
Hi, how you doing?
Yes, good.
I know used to hear Jimmy DeYoung talk about it. You've probably talked about it, but not to follow the study notes or maps. They're not inspired. The other day I was reading study notes in one of our trusted Bibles, somebody you would trust, pre-mill, pre-trib rapture. He says, second sentence of his introduction of John, he obviously was a Palestinian Jew. Maybe they rewrote those notes after the guy died. I know he's deceased, but is Trump right? Where did that term come from, and where did the Palestinian people, are they from Egypt and the surrounding area?
The current people are not. They're from Egypt. They're from Jordan. Their DNA is not from there. I think it was the Roman Emperor Hadrian that picked up the term, said let's call them Palestine, call it Palestine, which was really the Philistines, which was the greatest enemy of the Jews. And Yasser Arafat comes along and says, "Hey, I'm Palestinian," and that's a complete made-up story. It'd be like a German all of a sudden showing up, "I'm Irish and being persecuted. You stole my land." It's completely fake. We talk about it quite a bit here, actually. But yeah, great point. Laura in Wisconsin, line 3. Hi, Laura.
Hi. Yeah, I keep running into enough people that keep bringing up that they believe it's the Jews, and I'm Christian, so I'm against it. But it's the Jews that own all the banks and that are really running everything behind the scenes, and that they're the source of all the chaos and wars and problems in the world. And I can't believe it, and I'd like to have some advice on how to talk to them or try to persuade them. Well,
first of all, understand that a lot of them are reading the claptrap, the protocols of the elders of Zion, and it's claptrap. It's fake history. Dr. Woods?
Well, Stu Peters is out, spewing all this stuff. Candace Owens is spewing all this stuff. But if you really want to know how God thinks about it, even if what all these people say is true, which it isn't, God says concerning the nation of Israel and the Jewish people, Romans 11, verse 28, though they are your enemies, they are beloved on behalf of the patriarchs. So yes, they're troublemakers now. At least they were in the book of Acts. I don't want to generalize, that too far. But Paul, when the church was being persecuted in the book of Acts, he says, yeah, currently they are your enemies, but they are still beloved on behalf of the patriarchs. So the truth of the matter is, you can point out all kinds of problems with Jews. You can point out problems with any ethnicity for that matter. But God still has a unique plan for them where they will be brought into forgiveness through faith alone in Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah, and God will fulfill his covenants through them in the millennial kingdom.
Which is what is going to be in itself a powerful testimony that these people that were so anti-Jesus, so anti-Christian toward Christians or believers, become such strong believers in Yeshua and great evangelists. That 180 degrees in itself will be a powerful testimony, because people will be able to know there's no way you can explain that aside from God, correct?
Amen. And I don't know how I could add to that, so thank you for that.
Which is why people love the testimony of someone that was so bad and evil and then become a believer and strong witness, because it is a testament of the power of the gospel. Amen. All right, thank you guys. Stay tuned for Crosstalk.
This has been Worldview Radio.
And that's our broadcast on those stations. Coming back to Dr. Woods, everyone loves a redemption story. Why? But, many of us Christians love that redemption story. Saul, who becomes Paul, take these guys that we've known in the culture that were, everybody knew they were partiers and anti-God, anti-Jesus, anti-Christian, and then they become believers and they become some of the strongest, powerful, proclaimers of the gospel. And as Christians, we love those redemption stories. I think America, people have said about America, people love the underdog. They love seeing someone go from the bad to the good. They love that redemption story. And isn't that a lot of Hollywood movies over the years were redemption stories, right? Why is it, though, that the world doesn't want to look forward to, or even many of them don't understand or know, but why do they not, when they presented with the evidence as you and I both present, why do they not say, wow, okay, so there are some bad Jews, George Soros, Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, but there are bad Gentiles too. But that's pretty interesting what Dr. Woods and Brenner are saying, that some of these people that have been globalist, anti-Christian, that some of them of their people group are going to become the biggest evangelists for Yeshua, for Jesus. Wow. Let's pray for that. Let's look forward to that, and let's celebrate that that's coming, and that they will go from unbelief to belief. If everyone loves, a lot of people love a redemption story, I just say wait, because you're going to see the biggest redemption story in all of world history when it comes to the Jews, right?
Yeah, and what's the point of the whole thing at the end of the day is you get to the end of Romans 11, it's Paul kind of explodes into this doxology, glorifying God, because he looks at the big picture where God's people, the nation of Israel, nationally rejected their Messiah, and their Messiah was embraced by a far removed group, the Gentiles. And then as God has poured out his grace on the Gentiles for the last 2,000 years, Israel is becoming jealous. She's being provoked to jealousy, wanting her place of preeminence back. Well, that's actually going to happen in the events of the tribulation period and the millennial kingdom. So you look at the big picture and you step back and you see the grace of God everywhere. Therefore, who alone gets the glory? God does. Mm-hmm. And so it's a wonderful plan that he has devised whereby, you can look at Israel today, but God is not finished with them. There's a yet future spiritual work in store for them.
100%. AndyWoodsMinistries.org, AndyWoodsMinistries.org. And Dr. Woods and I will be in, Lord willing, we're going to be in Milwaukee, Waukesha, suburb of Milwaukee, April 15th, for what we're calling our Worldview Radio Bible Prophecy Rally. And, what are you going to be talking about? All I can tell you is we're going to be talking about Bible prophecy. But Dr. Woods, I can't really pick my talk yet because it's only February 7th. And you know what can happen between February 7th and April 15th? A lot, right? Just look at what we've uncovered this week with your help on the canal, in the proposal for a canal going through Gaza, and President Trump talking about America is going to take over the Gaza. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen between now and April 15th, so I'm not picking my full topic yet until I get close to it, because there could be so many things that pop up between now and then. But I can tell you this, whatever we speak about, it'll be relevant, it'll be applicable, and it will be Bible prophecy related. And it's April 15th at the Waukesha Expo Center. If you want to get free tickets, and we need to know you're coming there so we can have enough seats out, it is worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. What do you think you might speak on? Are you like me? You just don't even know yet because you're going to watch to see what happens in the news review now and then.
Well, just a little history here. I had my talk already at the end of 2023. I was going to talk on the days of Lot, and I actually secured that with you probably 6 months in advance. And then the events of October 7th happened, and you called me on the phone and said, scrap the whole thing. So we got to talk about what's going on with, the events of October the 7th. So with that history in mind, I'm keeping my cards close to the vest.
Yep. Same here, because I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen between now and then, but I do know this: it's a great time to be a Christian, and it's a great time to be a dispensationalist. It's a great time to be a Christian Zionist. It's a great time to be involved in Christian worldview. And I just want to say to all of those anti-dispensationalists that think they're going to Christianize the whole world, get everybody to sing Kumbaya, and things are going to get better and better. Don't you think it's going backwards, folks? The rise of hatred, the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of hatred of Christians, the wars, rumors of wars, plagues, pestilence, pandemics, food shortages. I don't know. I think Kirk Cameron and these guys need to rethink their eschatology. Dr. Woods?
Yeah, if your theology doesn't work out in real life, then you need to get out of the academic ivory tower and get in the real world, because the Bible is true and it's got to work itself out in practice.
And yet Kirk Cameron came to your town to speak at a conference and mocked a bunch of your beliefs, right?
Well, he came to our homeschool education graduation and trashed the rapture.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Woods, take care, guys.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served